Jason Young.
I figured out how to record on behalf of Tom. So we are recording, and yeah, you start whenever you want there, Tiger Lily.
I have an ignorant question because I've not used Google for these kinds of things, I think, ever. So I'm seeing a lot of people, and then I'm seeing a box that says 7 others. Is there a way that I change the gallery view to see everybody who's here?
Not really. You can make if you in the bottom right hand corner where you see like the people stacked on top of people, and there's a box that says 15.
Yeah.
If you click that, you can see a list of everybody that's here.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the way the boxes are placed, you just make your window as big as possible, and Google will fit in as many as possible. But it's not.
David, if you go down to the dot
yeah,
and go to change layout, it'll give you a tiled option. If you click that, I just did it, and I can now see everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but just be aware, David. If it gets bigger, it might continue to do that thing where it puts some people in like a queue.
Yeah, and people are going to be very tiny, also, I assume.
Some of us won't mind that, David.
And some of us are really tall, and you just can't tell.
Right.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Jim Warren, if I don't know you, and I am the founding artistic director of the American Globe Center. And Jason Young, who is part of the American Globe Center team, was clever enough to name this thing On the Playground with Jim Warren. So that's why I'm going to introduce myself first. And what I would like to do is hear from everybody that's in a little box. So we hear a name, we see the names. But what I would love to know is if you are one of the actors that I invited, and I'll ask for y'all first, if you could just quickly give us a tiny bit of your bio, and because it's On the Playground with Jim Warren, how did you come in contact with Jim Warren? What is your relationship with Jim Warren? And finally, what your relationship to Julius Caesar is, whether or not you've been in it, whether or not you've directed it, produced it, seen it 100,000 times, whatever is appropriate for you. So, Jim Warren, American Globe Center. I've directed Julius Caesar only twice, and most recently in West Virginia with Jason Young and Sarah Young. And we will talk about that in a little bit. But because I mentioned the Youngs, why don't you introduce yourselves, please?
My name is Jason Young, as Jim has now said several times. I am a member of the AGC team. I'm currently our Director of Outreach and Engagement, which is why y'all got emails from me. I also run the Rustic Mechanicals, which is the only professional touring Shakespeare troupe in the state of West Virginia. A lot of people are surprised we have one, but we do. We have one. And by default, we are the best. And Jim has been with us now for 6-7 seasons, ever since. I think he was off 1 year after leaving the ASC before becoming a mechanical and doing a whole bunch of other things. And so at this point, my wife and I run the troupe, and we basically act for Jim. He directs just about everything that we do. And last season, my relationship with Julius Caesar is complicated because last season I played Brutus in a production of Julius Caesar that Jim directed.
I'm Sarah Young. I'm company manager for the Rustic Mechanicals here in West Virginia. And I was most recently in Julius Caesar last year when I played Cassius.
Going to my upper left, David Lohr.
I'm David Lohr. I was an actor with Shenandoah Shakespeare Express, Shenandoah Shakespeare, and the American Shakespeare Center for a total of 9 years. Mr. John Harrell and I were the first 2 members of the resident troupe of the Blackfriars troupe. And Jim and I met, I believe it was 1996, the first time that I auditioned for Jim in Boston, and was not able to take the job that I was offered at that point, but then accepted work with Shenandoah Shakespeare Express in 1999 and toured with them for 2.5 years before becoming a member of the Blackfriars troupe. I was first in Julius Caesar at the Blackfriars playing Cassius, and then I played Cassius again a number of years later with the Southwest Shakespeare Company in Mesa, Arizona.
John Harrell.
Yes, as David said, I was an original member with him of the American Shakespeare Center resident troupe, we called it. I worked at the Blackfriars ASC for off and on close to 30 years, but continuously at the Blackfriars for almost 20 years. And I was actually just looking somewhere here. I have a count of the number of times I've been in Julius Caesar, but it's kind of on the 5 to 6 order, something like that. And I've played quite a few of the roles in it. It was also the first Shakespeare play I ever did. So,
what's the smattering of the roles you've played?
I've played Brutus and Cassius and Caesar and the soothsayer, Decius Brutus. I've played a bunch of those guys, and
Gotcha.
just about everybody who helps someone kill themselves at the end of that play, I think I've played. So.
Josh Innerst.
Hi everyone. Josh Innerst here. I'm an actor, and I've been based here in the Midwest in the Cleveland area for the last probably 5-6 years. Right after I left the ASC, settled down here, and let me see. How did I meet Jim? Jim brought me on. Gosh, what season was that? It was Return to the Forbidden Planet. The second time you guys did it, and
first time at the Blackfriars. Well, first one that was staged at the Blackfriars. The touring one that we did before that did perform at the Blackfriars.
And that was a fun season. Troilus and Cressida, all's well that ends well. And then I stuck around for about 5 years between the touring troupe and the resident company, and then left. And my relationship to JC, I played Brutus when Ben Kearns directed for Dangerous Dreams tour, I think it was. And it was a good production. It was a lot of fun. That's
awesome.
Me.
Annabelle.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I doing okay? Okay, great, amazing. Thank you. My internet here leaves lots to be desired. I'm Annabelle. I'm an actor. I have a BSA and an MSA. BSA from UC Santa Barbara, MSA from NYU, both in acting. And I know Jim because he hired me in 2017 for the American Shakespeare Center tour. And I've worked at ASC on and off ever since. And I have done Julius Caesar 3 times. First one was my first paycheck after grad school, and then I've done it twice at the ASC since then. One of them was my first resident season at the ASC in 2019, and one of them was last spring. And I've been Decius Brutus twice, and I was Casca this last spring. So I've been a lot of conspirators, and I've also helped everybody kill themselves in the end and so forth.
Annabelle is in that group of actors that I love, that I followed for a while and finally found a spot for her and hired her, and then left the ASC before I got to director. So we have to fix that. We will fix that at the Globe.
We're ships in the night, but we won't be forever.
Sarah Fallon.
Hello, my name is Sarah Fallon. I have been working at the American Shakespeare Center on and off for 20 years. Jim hired me in 2004, and Jim, I just learned this. Apparently, that's because you thought I would make a great Torvel in Les Liaisons. I didn't know that that was the linchpin that brought me in, but I absolutely loved that play that we did there, my very first season in 2004. I have been in Julius Caesar 3 times, twice at the ASC. My first, I played Portia and Cinna the Poet at Colorado Shakespeare Festival, and that was a really fun double. And then I played Cassius to Renee Thornton Jr.'s Brutus in a crazy fast Ren season that we did in 2014. And then I spent 6 months playing Mark Antony last year with Annabelle, and she was one of my wonderful, wonderful plebs, my plebeian out there for the whole forum scene, which is so huge. Very important to have good plebeians. So that's
I've always thought so.
That's how I come to it.
Let's go to your left, and that handsome gentleman on your left sitting right next to you. And have him introduce himself, and we'll have everybody else introduce themselves too.
I am a pathetic Shakespeare fanboy, so much so that I pursued Sarah Fallon for 7 years. She refused to marry me twice, and it took an enormous amount of effort on my part just so that I could get free theatre tickets. But it's worked out exceptionally well. And of course, as you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from here. I came all the way across from England just to see Shakespeare, because they can't do Shakespeare in England like Jim does Shakespeare. So I had to come all the way over here to the Blackfriars to see proper Shakespeare.
His name is
Wow.
Charles, also, by the way,
It's
for those of you who
irrelevant.
don't know him.
Sarah Fallon's husband is all I need to be addressed as.
Next to Charles on my screen is a gentleman named James Keegan. Maybe you could introduce yourself, sir. And of course, you're on mute. You are on the mute. There we
Gotcha.
go.
I'm used to Zoom. Sorry about that. Yes, I'm James Keegan. I came on board at ASC with Sarah Fallon in 2004 and performed on and off there for many years. Since had great times with Jim, who directed me in a lot of different stuff, and I've worked with a lot of these folks, but not with every one of them I wanted to. Delighted to be here. Looking forward to hearing you guys talk about Julius Caesar. I never performed in Julius Caesar at ASC. In all the shows I did there, I was never in that show, but I have been in the play. That's about it.
If you had to list 3 roles that you loved playing at the Blackfriars, they would be?
They would be Falstaff, King Lear, and Iago.
Not bad roles.
The one thing that James is missing out, and it's probably worth mentioning.
No one asked you a goddamn thing. Your turn is over. Please be quiet. Go back to England if necessary.
He's kissed my wife more than I have.
Not true.
Wow.
And perhaps better. Who knows?
Wow.
Undoubtedly. And
Better get on
certainly
that,
more
Charles.
attractively.
Certainly more performatively.
Absolutely.
Kristen Barner, are you there with us? Or did you have to step away? You are on the mute.
I am here. I am.
There
Okay.
you go.
Yeah. All right. We've got tornado warnings and alarms and dogs, and so I am Mrs. David Lohr, and I had to ask him to marry me probably 24 times before he said yes. So Jim, I don't know what you're doing to these actors, man, but they are hard to get. So,
Damaged, highly damaged people.
So I taught Julius Caesar. I watched Julius Caesar. I married Cassius. I do like the lean and hungry look. And I was box office and house manager at the Blackfriars for a little while. So, and from Stanton originally.
Awesome. David Watson, how are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you, sir. Hi, I'm Dave Watson. I was an acting fellow at the ASC post Jim Warren for a year in 2019, and went on to get my graduate degree at VCU, so I was only there for a year. But I did Julius Caesar while I was there with John and Annabelle, playing Caius Ligarius, the unspoken survivor of the massacre, and and also Lepidus, which I also did in Antony and Cleopatra that Sharon Off directed that year. And I'm very excited to hear what's going on and to hear what people have to say about Julius Caesar. I like Shakespeare. I've been acting for 30 plus. I act and direct. I've been acting for about 30 years, directing for about 15. So that's me. Oh, and I'm sorry. I'm now based in New York and Massachusetts. I started a little not-for-profit in Massachusetts. I'm burgeoning little thing there that I'm trying to get going, and doing readings of plays right now, but hopefully we'll get a little bigger as we go along.
Awesome. Ms. Phillips.
Me and there's 2 of us today. My mom's here.
Oh my gosh. Your mom just popped up.
I roped her in. I was like, Jim Warren and everybody's here. We're all big fans. I started going to the Blackfriars, the American Shakespeare Center, in about 2007, we first started going as, just viewers. And then I started going to camp so I was a camper for 3 or 4 years. And then I went on to study theater and literature in college and study in London. And now I'm in Los Angeles working as a writer, and I'm an actor. So it was very, very formative.
Very cool. Well, I think we have to go to your mom next.
Hi, I'm Marta Phillips, and I live in Richmond, Virginia. And as Madeline said, we started coming to the ASC in 2007, and we were longtime subscribers there. And she attended this event last month, and she was telling me about it, and I was just really curious to hear about this new endeavor. We lived in Fairfield, Connecticut for a few years, so I'm familiar with the area that you're going to be moving into, and just really curious to hear about this new project.
Fantastic. Camille, am I saying your name right?
Yes, you are. Hopefully my sound's coming out okay. I'm on 2 devices. I'm Camille Mustachio, and you and I first crossed paths in 2006 when I worked more from the education department at ASC. But more recently, you joined in, this was during COVID, with a group that Ildi and I run, the Martext Players.
Yes.
That was so wonderful. Please come back. It was such a lovely time. Well, we are, while my experience with Julius Caesar is primarily from a teaching perspective, Martext is currently doing Julius Caesar. So we just did a reading of Act 3 on Thursday. So I was Cassius and a pleb. It was a good time.
Very cool. Oh my gosh, I see Christopher Sheeran on my screen. Hello, sir.
Hello. Yeah, I didn't know how to put in Seco, Sheeran. Good to see you, Jim, after all these years. Good to see you. What are we meant to do? Tell a little bit of our background?
Yeah, just a little bit. And I said Christopher, not knowing if you were still Seco. So I was trying to keep it safe.
It's interchangeable depending on the forum. So I think more people know me as Seco here. For those of you who don't, I went to James Madison with those on the call that did, and watched SSE in its earliest years. I actually was to be a member, I think. 91 to 94 was when I was doing a studies abroad program, and it was over in London. Ralph started it over there, and I couldn't get back, and there was like sort of vital casting and or administrative stuff that you needed to be on the ground to do. So yeah, I could have been in the company. And then after that, I just became a super fan, and I started a company in 94 that's now known as the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company. So that's going on over in Ohio if you ever get a chance out there. And other than that, I'm just I went to Delaware with Sarah. I went to school with John, and I'm a super fan. I come back when I can. I live in Centerville, Virginia.
Very cool.
And I'm so excited about this next level. I know I talked about a lot of ASC stuff, but I'm so excited about all the stuff that you're doing with AGC.
Yep, and we will get to all of that. Now, I thought I had everybody here, but I don't. I hit the list over on the side, and there are folks listed there whose faces I don't see. Peter Hilton, are you there? Peter Simon.
Yes. Where are we?
Oh,
hi.
I know that person to your right.
This one as well.
Yes.
So I'm Peter Simon Hilton, and this is Vanessa Morosco. I'm the first gentleman, and Vanessa is...
I'm the new executive director of the American Shakespeare Center, and I'm so happy to be here, and longtime collaborators with many of these folks who I've had the joy of working with, and who Jim Warren included have helped shape the artist I am today. So I'm so happy to be in the room with all of you.
Woohoo! I see Nora Fallon's name. I know who she's related to. Is she here in the boxes too?
She should be. I don't know if but
she may be shy.
Maybe she's shy.
Maybe she's shy.
Nora Fallon is my mother. So
Awesome.
she brought me into this world, and I'm forever grateful. She's amazing. So she should be there with my dad, but maybe, I don't know. This is the Google Meet is kind of new for them, so they might not know how to unmute themselves.
Is
She's
there
trying to, she
anybody?
just texted me. She's trying to turn on her microphone.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Is there anybody else who can hear me, whose name I don't see or face I don't see, who is on here?
Jim, I don't think we've heard from Jessica Fidalgo.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Hi. Oh, I didn't intend to say anything. I'm in the no man's land between Vermont and Maine. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yes.
But I'll keep it brief. It's so amazing to mostly here since I'm trying to keep my eyes on the road. But I just wanted to follow along. Super excited for the HEC project and to hear and see so many familiar faces. A little disappointed I didn't get a shout out from Mr. Sarah Fallon about introducing him to his wife, but we can address that offline. And I think actually the person on this call I've known the longest is Siko, who dated my college roommate. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to see and hear so many of your beautiful faces. And I will pass along any regards to Mr. Paul Fidalgo, who I will be seeing later today. So, yay.
Yay, Jessica.
And
Jason,
then-
with your eagle eye, do you see anybody else?
You got Ben Reed on there.
Benjamin Reed.
Oh, Benjamin Reed. Miss
Hello.
Reed. Hello, I can hear you. Yes, I can see you.
Hey, everybody. My name is Benjamin Reed. I am the founder of Stageable.com and a longtime actor, artist with many of the people on this call. I'm thrilled to be here and excited to hear about Julius Caesar.
Fantastic. All right, and we're going to hear from Benjamin about Stageable a little bit later. So I sent the actors that I invited, I sent them a billion questions that I am going to ignore for the moment because that's the kind of fella I am. I want to give 4 definitions, and I would love for anyone who has an opinion on any character in this play that fits one or more of those definitions to you and why. So one definition of protagonist is the main character whose journey drives the plot. Antagonist, one definition, is the character or force that opposes the protagonist, creating conflict and obstacles. The other 2 words, hero, is someone admired for courage, noble qualities, and good deeds. Villain, a character who opposes the hero, often with malicious intent and harmful actions. So in Jarl's opinion, in this play, who's a protagonist, who's an antagonist, who's a hero, who's a villain, and why?
Wait a minute. These 4 things are supposed to be in Shakespeare?
He certainly messes with this formula in ways that are atypical for a lot of other writers.
True.
But do characters, I mean, especially if you played them and you had to crawl inside their skin, did you think of yourself as the hero, the protagonist?
I sure did. I sure did as Anthony, for sure. Absolutely. But I mean, I think your question is pointed in this play for a very good reason, that a lot of these characters, these main characters, are all of these things at different points, or can be seen as all of these roles depending on who is defining them, right? So, you know, I'm sure that Cassius doesn't necessarily see himself as the villain or the antagonist, but if you're Antony looking in on that, if you're Antony looking in on the conspirators or things like that, they all fit that definition. And I think probably Brutus fits all of those definitions at any given moment in the play. Brutus, I feel like, I've never played Brutus, but I feel like that is the most difficult role in this play, hands down.
So you think of Antony as the protagonist and the hero?
Yes.
Anybody else from another character's point of view think of Antony as antagonist and or villain? Go, David.
I tend to think of Brutus actually as the protagonist of play, only because the very last speech that Antony makes is, "Here lies the noblest Roman of them all." So even Mark Antony recognizes, at least in my view, Mark Antony recognizes that while Brutus is led astray by fellow antagonists, his motivations are honest, and he's committed to it from a place of Rome, as he says in his initial speech right before Antony bushwhacks him with his famous speech. So I see Brutus as being, for me anyway, one of the central protagonists of the play.
As a former Brutus, I think that, you know, that part of that definition of the story, the person whose story we follow, it seems like we get the most of Brutus's story than anybody else in the play. So I think that fits that protagonist definition. I think Brutus deals with several antagonists throughout the play, and I think Antony is one of them, because if Antony doesn't take the pulpit and give the famous speech and rile up the masses, it's over. You know, the done deal. Antony creates the war in opposition to Brutus. Well, I mean, of course, my actions led to Antony's actions. The dominoes, right? But if Brutus is the protagonist, and the antagonist is creating the opposition for the protagonist, and I think Antony has to fit in that definition as well.
As Brutus, and I guess this question goes to other Bruti. Did y'all inside of that character think of Antony as the bad guy? I mean, you were all on the same team, and then because of the assassination, there were different teams created. So with Brutus on one side, along with Cassius, and against the side that is Octavius and Brutus. Did you think of Antony as the bad guy?
I think Antony became the bad guy for me. I had an interaction. Brutus has an interaction with Antony at the funeral, and as Brutus is leaving before Antony speaks, and I think in that moment Antony was not the bad guy at all. In our cut, and I think it's in the way the full play worked, Jim. The next time Brutus sees Antony is on the battlefield, when Antony says, "Witness the hole you made in Caesar's heart." And at that point, I just strung the motherfucker up right then. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I think he becomes the bad guy for Brutus in a huge way, from that moment at the funeral to that moment on the battlefield.
That's not your cut, Jason. That is Shakespeare. Yeah. That is Shakespeare, because that is absolutely what happens. Is they see each other in that forum scene, and then they don't encounter one another again until the battlefield.
I think that's even. But I only read my lines in the cut that I'm given, so I'm never really sure what else is happening.
But then again, Jim Warren does your cuts, so you're probably getting the best damn cut ever in the history of cuts, Jason.
Hey,
y'all who
worked with Jim Warren in the past, does he? This is what he says in our rehearsals now. Does he always say, your fabulous editor has given you, or your incredible editor has provided you? He loves to use those lines in rehearsal. Now, I don't know if that's something from the old days or something he developed.
No, he was always genius boy with us, which wasn't himself.
Yeah, no, that was Shakespeare with Genius Boy, and I never did. I mean, except for, I don't know if any of these faces, maybe David Lohr was on tour in the few years that we did a 90-minute version of plays, and I don't even think we did that. There was a time where we didn't. I mean, we cut for 2 hours, but it was 2 hours without an intermission, and then I felt pressure to create a shorter show for certain venues if we were in a high school on the road. But I don't think anybody here was a part of that. And with Jason's company in West Virginia, oh, there we go. Thank you.
I did it. I remember those days.
And depending on what year and what show, we hacked mercilessly. Those weren't, because that was a play that was already rehearsed and performed in a more full way, and then we truncated it. So that's different than surgically trying to create a shorter play. Because if you learn a speech, it's really hard to lose the third line, the seventh line, and the 14th line rather than lose the whole second half of the speech.
Yes, I don't think we did it anymore after the year I did it.
It's too damn hard. It was too damn
we
hard.
fondly remembered as a crisis. Yeah.
I said we
did,
didn't
though.
do it on my tour, but I think that we did, because I remember some meetings out in the parking lot when we were rehearsing the 90-minute version. Conversely, rereading Julius Caesar this time, I was actively looking for any cuts, and I don't think there were any. I think we performed the entire text at the Blackfriars. Maybe you can remember something that was cut, Jim, but I sure couldn't find anything.
Well, that's exactly what I would want people to say. I'm sure that we did cut, but because I don't think we ever did any play completely uncut. And we can go into all the Shakespeare geekery that I don't think anybody ever performed those plays uncut until we got that first folio and started to revere it and think of it as Shakespeare's version of the play and think we have to honor that whole thing, which I think is poppycock. That those plays were probably never performed in their entirety for what's written in the folio. But we can have that discussion later. But Josh, back to Brutus. You were about to talk Brutus.
Well, I think so much of it, when you look at that question of antagonist, protagonist, there's like two different answers. One is textual and then one is per production, because so much of how you structure your show, you can shine. Like I saw this at the Writers Theater in Chicago a couple years ago, and it was a Cassius forward story. The way they did the cut, Cassius was the clear protagonist of the play, which I thought was an interesting take on it. And when we did it at the ASC, when Kearns directed it, one of the comments we got from, I think it was Midgley, from Patrick Midgley, that I really liked, he said, watching the show, he said, I definitely went into it thinking that this was Brutus's story and we would see it from his perspective. But and I don't know if it was because of the way Kearns approached our world, but he said, I couldn't pick a side throughout the production, and that it really felt like an ensemble world, that we didn't have a favored point of view. We were given kind of equal points of view throughout the production, which some of that I think might be down to Kearns, what he was really trying to accomplish with the show. So for us, for me, I mean, I'll be entirely honest. I think so much of when I played Brutus, my crisis was a personal crisis. And so I grew to, by the time we ended that show, really start to view Cassius as more of an antagonist, in kind of what was the linchpin that brought about this eventual destruction where we are. But that some of that was just also because it was my dear friend Tim. So we were just, able to putz a whole season together, and had so much fun working together. So I think so much of it depends on your individual production, where the direction is taking you, with the text.
Well, that was certainly, Ben Kearns and I had a lot of discussions about that, about how can we create a production that an audience can see it through different characters' eyes, rather than trying to narrow the focus to make it through one person's eye. That's part of the brilliant thing about Shakespeare all the way across the board. But this play in particular is have two people sitting next to each other who have completely different opinions on who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist.
Yeah.
Yes, John.
I would like to make a half-hearted pitch for Octavian as the antagonist in this play. And it's really, if you look at the two plays together, Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra, he clearly is the villain in Antony and Cleopatra, and he's kind of a wiener in Julius Caesar, but he is someone who ultimately is opposed to every other character in the play. He's Antony's enemy, he's Brutus's enemy, he's the enemy of, we don't see him until after Julius Caesar is dead, so we can't really say he's Caesar's enemy, but who knows. Anyway, I don't know. He seems to me to be the one who ultimately turns out to be sort of the great villain of Western world, you know, in Shakespeare's eyes. So.
And John, I think you make a good point that I also have a hard time viewing this as one play. I tend to view them as I mean, they're not, but Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra. And in that kind of macro view, I see Antony as really the primary arc that we're following. Yeah.
So John and Dave, and was it just John and Dave on this list? Y'all did Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra
And Annabelle.
Webb, yes, and Annabelle. And did you find did those directors talk to each other? That was two different directors. Did they talk to each other about it being one large, two pieces of one large story, or did they deal with it as two separate pieces that just happen to have some of the same people?
They had the same costumes, but beyond that, I don't know that they really talked that much about.
Sorry.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I was to
I was
see
actually
I didn't get to see the A and C. I only saw the Julius Caesar.
They had design elements in common, and they had the actors playing, for the most part, the same character as they traveled through the story. But other than that, I would not say there was a lot of cohesion as one greater story.
Yeah, definitely no cohesion. But I would like to add real quick that I think that that Julius Caesar himself, to me, is like the Edward Albee equivalent of the power that's always lingering in the background behind everyone's machinations. So even after his death, to me, he's sort of an antagonist, and Antony becomes a kind of an extension by default of Caesar's ambition. And if you connect it to the Antony and Cleopatra, then it sort of makes more, at least in our production, makes a little more sense, because Antony, while he's trying to promote Cleopatra's agenda, is definitely trying to be, the forefront character.
We haven't heard much because of the way that question is. I want to get inside of folks who have played Cassius, or however you pronounced his name. And I'm interested in, from Cassius' point of view, why did Cassius organize the conspirators? And I'm assuming, Cassius, you organized the conspirators because of the lines we have in this play, at least for Shakespeare's story, that you were the leader of that, who then approached Brutus. But I'm interested in the why. And there are some lines that give us some text to justify that, but other stuff y'all had to add as motivation. Why did y'all start this conspiracy?
I'll jump in, I guess. And I will say that several years before I even tried to become an actor, I was teaching English at the University of New Orleans, which is what I thought I had set out to do in life. And I was becoming very dissatisfied with my own ability to do that. And so I started entertaining the possibility of at least walking across the campus and auditioning for a production of Much Ado About Nothing, which is what I eventually did. But about 3 years before that, I had actually learned those first two long speeches of Cassius in the opening scene. And I have been thinking in the last couple of weeks about, why did I do that? What was it that drew me to them? And obviously it comes from my own personal makeup in a number of ways. And I think the primary thing was the ardency of his passion, that those speeches in particular just contain such zeal, such passion. And I was trying to think if there's one word that encapsulates him, it would be zealot. But then I looked up zealot, and of course it comes from biblical and a Jewish tradition, and so it doesn't really fit. But if we think broadly of what a zealot is, I think Cassius is a zealot. But then I also, in this rereading, started looking at those speeches and thinking, what is it that he really says? he never really says, your question, Jim, is about what makes him think that Caesar's going to be a tyrant. He never actually uses those words or that word. He talks about him being a god. He talks about how inappropriate it is that there should ever be an age in Rome that's dedicated to one man. We know what he's talking about. We know that he's talking about one man having ultimate power, but he never really uses the word tyrant for whatever that might mean. And it's also really personal, which I think is the striking thing. And that's probably another reason that I was drawn to it as a 20-some-year-old, that that sense of anger about the way things are, that sense of grievance about the way things are, that sense of personal grievance, that somebody else gets stuff that I think I deserve, or that I worked just as hard to get that somebody else got instead. That first long speech where he talks about, you know, Caesar daring him to jump into the river. And I jumped in, man. I jumped in with my armor on. And then halfway out, I had to rescue him because he's such a fucking weakling. And then this guy, so now this is the guy who everybody's worshiping, and I have to bow down to him if he so much as looks at me. So there's a really personal element to it too. And then as for why he gets Brutus, what I've always thought is, and I probably would think that this is true of myself as well, I think there are people who recognize I'm a good lieutenant. I'm not a good general. This guy's got more of what the people love. He has the heart of the people. They trust him. They believe him. They believe in the enormous intelligence that he has. I'm not that guy. He never really says that, but I think he knows that in his heart, that he's not the guy who could lead the conspiracy. So he has to get Brutus involved in order for it to have any chance of success. A little while ago, Jim, you used this gesture. When I was just thinking of this gesture, we talked about Brutus being the protagonist. And I think that has a lot to do with the way the play is structured, but also because what happens when Cassius gets the conspirators together to go to Brutus? They all go to his place, and the focus comes right down to this one guy. And so I've always seen him as the protagonist. But at any rate, I think that's Cassius' motivation. He has this powerful, powerful need and powerful desire, but he knows that he's not the guy who can make it happen.
Why, Cassius, why do you need Caesar dead?
That's a really good question too.
I mean, as a middle-aged white guy, I think about the Roman Empire a lot. But I think that the sort of understanding from the Plutarch and just sort of generally from Roman history is that the idea of a king was anathema to the Romans, and here's a man who's trying to make himself king. And there have been other societies to whom a king is supposed to be anathema. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I can't either.
But like that is just not a situation that can be suffered in Rome. Is the rise of a demagogue and a king? I think that's what it is. It sounds kind of like that doesn't. I guess when you're trying to play a role, that doesn't sound like David's suggestion that there's more personal motivation for Cassius. It's probably a little easier to access as an actor rather than of sort of, let me take the historical perspective on these speeches, but I do think that the historical perspective is important in understanding kind of why these people do what they're doing. And it's true of Brutus too, that the same reason that Cassius wants him on board seems to be the same reason Brutus wants to be on board, which is that his family has been involved in the dethroning of kings in Rome for hundreds of years. And that's kind of the Brutus brand, is to get rid of kings. And it seems like Brutus wants to live up to that brand, and Cassius wants to have that brand, as part of the deal.
What I've always thought was curious about that one speech of Cassius, though, is that he's not really proposing this, but if you just look at the words, he seems to be proposing that Brutus just take the place of Caesar.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he has that whole comparison. Just look at Caesar, look at Brutus. You could do what he's doing. And then, of course, in the last third of the play, we see the problem that they've really had is that they haven't accounted for what happens when you have a vacuum of power and everybody starts trying to grab it. But at least in those first couple of speeches, he just seems to be saying, hey, we got to get rid of Caesar. Why couldn't you do the job just as well as Caesar's going to?
We got two Sarahs here who have played Cassius. Any thoughts?
I think so. For me, it was definitely it's along the same lines of what John was saying. I think it's definitely the fear of a tyrant. There's a tyrant. I never looked at it though from the perspective of maybe Cassius is saying Brutus should, because yes, he does compare them and say, you know, why should that name be sounded more than your, that kind of thing. But maybe he doesn't believe that Brutus is going to take advantage of the power in the way that Cassius perceives that Caesar is. That Caesar is taking advantage of his power in a way that that Cassius doesn't believe Brutus would, because Brutus is more noble. And so if Brutus were in a more powerful position, I don't think Cassius believes that he would abuse that power in the same way. And I think it's absolutely true that Cassius knows Brutus has to be on board. If they're going to get the people behind this is a huge, daring, very dangerous thing that they're trying to plot and do. And if Brutus isn't on board, it's going to be mayhem. Of course, ends up being mayhem anyway, but it's going to be absolute bananas if we don't have the most honorable man in Rome at this moment saying, look, I loved Caesar and this is why I did this. I loved him and I see that he is a danger to what we stand for as Romans.
They subsequently let the PR game get away from them, but I do think that's what they're thinking at the beginning, for sure.
100%.
I'm going to give Sarah a chance to talk, but I have a thought about what you just said, Sarah, so I'll hold that.
No, do your thought now.
Well, I just think about, and I've always, well, since I got to play the role many, many times, there were just and this is true in so many scripts that Shakespeare has given us, but like, there were just so many opportunities for us to do what we were trying to do better, or not at all. Like, had we just listened, like Cassius gets it right in hindsight about like, no, Antony and Caesar need to die together. And it's like Brutus follows Cassius to an extent, and had he gone further, it would have been easier to control that PR game that you were talking about, John. Much easier.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much of it is Caesar is going to be a tyrant so much as it is he already has more power than we other senators have, and that's not cool. I think it's more about we each have our strengths and what we contribute. There shouldn't be one of us above. And I think that's why there's that comparison between Brutus and Caesar. What you are just as good, but his name gets sounded more. I can swim farther than he can, but his name gets sounded more. Why are we also not getting recognition? So I think it's more about equal recognition, distribution of power, as opposed to one singular person having it.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to quickly say to both John and Jason's, I'm sorry, Sarah Young?
Sarah.
Yeah.
Point. To me, it seems largely to be about status. I mean, for Brutus, even if Caesar becomes emperor, Brutus's status already is at a point where we don't really know where he would fit into the structure of an empire, if an empire were to start with Caesar at the helm. Whereas in Cassius's case, a republic allows that character on any given year, depending on who relationships he or she develops, to have an opportunity at status. Whereas if Caesar takes over as an emperor, then like a king, the only real people that have status are those who are on Caesar's good side. So it just seems to me that Cassius takes a gamble to assure that his opportunities moving forward remain viable. And under Caesar, he doesn't see that. I mean, over and above, obviously, the whole thing of king, emperor that John has pointed out, there's just the machinations of status seem to be pretty big.
One of the genius things Shakespeare does in that scene with Cassius trying to convince Brutus that Caesar's no more higher on the food chain than Brutus. In that scene, there are those cheers off stage, and then Caesar comes back on, and then we get the story from Casca. He was offered the crown 3 times and said no. So everything about he's going to seize power, and perhaps that's a bad thing, Shakespeare undercuts that and has Caesar saying no. He could have said yes.
But he undercuts it, but he colors the undercutting with the way Casca delivers the speech. Like, it's undercut, but then it's from a very...
He fain would have had it.
Yeah, it's a very specific POV that we are delivered the information that he denied the crown. You know what I mean? It's not just factual information. It's not fair and balanced, if you will. There's a definite opinion about the way that information is delivered to us.
Go, Annabelle.
I was just going to say that, yeah, the PR thing always involves Casca because, yes, the refusing of the crown, Casca very, very clearly paints as the same kind of thing that Richard III is doing about, oh, it couldn't possibly be me, right? You know, but he wants it to be him, and he's just trying to do that for appearances. And then also, it seems to me that the need for Cassius in the plot is pretty explicitly stated between Casca and Cassius in their little side conversation right before they go to Brutus. Casca says he, meaning Brutus, sits high in all the people's hearts, and that which would appear offense in us, me and you, his countenance, like richest alchemy, will change to virtue and to worthiness. We're going to look like assholes if we do this. If we have him, we do not look like assholes anymore.
Well, and that POV from Casca's perspective, Shakespeare in that whole scene also gives Casca so much flavor, so much of an interesting personality. We know it's him commenting on it. And that doesn't make us think he's a good reporter or bad reporter. It makes us think he's a unique reporter with his unique point of view. That is neither true nor false. It's his opinion.
And it's very strong, whatever it is.
Yes. If the Casca's any damn good. And I'm sure you were you were damn good. I saw that. So that brings us to I think only one person in these boxes played Caesar. And John Harrell, how did you crawl inside that guy's skin in terms of the power you thought you possessed at the beginning of the play and where you thought that was going until you had a few sharp things pointed at you?
Yeah, you know, okay. First of all, let me qualify by saying it was a long time ago. So I'm not. So
Yes,
I may have different opinions about it now, but it actually, I mean, I don't think it's too radical to say that Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Caesar, is not a very profoundly drawn character. He kind of is, you know, he sort of listens to his wife and then doesn't. He sort of, you know, has some things to say about Cassius's dietary habits. And he just, I mean, he refers to himself in the third person all the time, which, you know, is kind of a way to be, I guess. He doesn't, like, it's interesting if you didn't know this play and you heard that Shakespeare had written a play about Julius Caesar called Julius Caesar, you might think that you would get a richer character, but you don't get much out of that character. He's kind of a piece of granite, a sort of slab of granite in the middle of the play that everyone's around. That's kind of how I remember feeling about it then. I didn't feel like I had a very sort of rich angle on that. Maybe I might do it differently now, and I might be blown away by somebody who did it in a way that I thought, oh my God, I totally missed the point of that character. But I don't see it as a particularly rich characterization in Shakespeare's play.
Something that goes along with that a little bit, John, is when we just did it last year, you kind of assume that everybody knows what happens to Julius Caesar because it's such a huge part of our history, but there were people that weren't very familiar with the play and didn't know necessarily that he gets assassinated. And when that happens in Act 3, and then we took an intermission, there were people who were like, whoa, what's the rest of this play going to be about? Because I thought I showed up to Julius Caesar and now Caesar's dead. And they're like, and there are also people who say about this play that, you know, it should end after the forum, right? All the rest of it is like that the forum should be, and the end, no more Caesar, right? But there were people, and it shocked me because I just thought, well, everybody kind of knows that, but they don't, right? So it was, you know, you're right. He's not, I don't think he's very well fleshed out. And then if you don't know the story, you come in and you're a little bamboozled by the fact that he's gone. Now, what are we going to listen to for another hour?
And I think that's actually counterpointed, because I remarked on it the last time we watched Julius Caesar. Well, I watched Sarah B. Anthony. You've got to appreciate that back when this play was written, everybody knew everything about the Roman Empire, because it starts with Pompey. It starts with the murder of Pompey. Who knows who Pompey is today? Nobody at all. It absolutely, it just occurred to me when I was watching it, I thought, this is a very peculiar opening, because nobody has any context for this. Nobody knows who Pompey is. And there's no chorus that comes and tells us who Pompey is, you know? And so I think, to address John's point, that Shakespeare probably didn't think he needed to color the character, because everybody knew who Julius Caesar was.
I want to, Sarah, we had some, we just toured this last year, and we had like, I had a college professor say to me at one stop, I forgot how early in the play Caesar died.
Yeah.
It is. But I want to connect some dots and ask John a question about what you just said about Caesar, because was it you, Josh, that was talking about Patrick Midgley saying that he couldn't pick a side in the production? And John, do you think that the way that Caesar is written, if you don't have a director or an actor who are trying to present Caesar as a particularly tyrannical human that has it in him, or a particularly not, but because he kind of is vanilla and middle of the road, and I could see this, but I can't see it there. Do you think it helps with that idea of, you know, because that's the question we would ask the students after the show is Team Brutus or Team Anthony? Like, where are you on this?
Well, I do think that Caesar, at least in the productions I've been in, is a great example of the old phrase that the crowd makes the king. That whatever Caesar's thing is, whatever the actor is trying to do with the part, he is definitely the big dog in every scene that he's in. And he walks in and everybody stops to listen to what he has to say, and everybody gets out of his way and all that stuff. So if what you're looking for, even if it's sort of value neutral, like he's a good dictator or a bad dictator, he's definitely a dictator. And so if you're looking to, I think that the play does set the stakes well for Cassius and Antony to deal with it. I mean, we hear later that Antony, who, by the way, may be completely full of shit, loved Julius Caesar, you know, and that they were best buddies. And maybe he definitely touched him on the Lupercal, or no, he touched Portia on, or whatever, touched Calpurnia on the Lupercal. That's what it is. But they may be. I mean, we hear that Antony really loved him, and we know that he's a big important guy. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that it just doesn't seem like much of a characterization to me. Maybe it is because of what Charles says, that everybody kind of knows who Caesar is, and he's just this force that needs to be dispatched in order for the play to take place and have stakes. I don't know.
Let me ask. Anthony might be full of shit, but he does say when no one else is around besides the audience that he goes on after he has shook all the bloody hands and he's alone with the corpse. He does say he lauds Caesar and has all the great, you know, that bleeding piece of earth, thou art the greatest, you know, like you know, is he doing that? Sure, he still could be full of shit, but he's not saying that. Oh, John. He's not saying that
Hercules.
for for anyone else's benefit that's on stage besides the audience, right? There's no other players when he is saying all the wonderful things about what he believed Caesar to be.
That is true.
If we take this point of view that when Shakespeare was probably writing this, we don't know for a fact when he wrote any of these damn plays, but if we assume that he was writing this when most people think he was, this wasn't early Shakespeare. He was on top of his game. He was writing whatever the hell he wanted to. Why might he, other than everybody already knew who Caesar was, why might he have written it? Why might he have underwritten it on purpose? What
Well,
does
I
that
mean,
give us?
Underwritten the role
Gosh.
of Caesar, you mean?
Correct.
I mean, it's awfully dangerous for him to be casually writing the death of not monarch, but monarch figure, and so he's able to cast him as kind of in such an uncommitted way that I think either side of an Elizabethan or even nearing Jacobean debate could choose to see the other or themselves in Caesar. So Shakespeare, he's the master of getting to have his cake and eat it too as a writer. And I think he gets away with that with this play by how vaguely he paints the problem of Caesar. Because especially as we hear Brutus talk about him, he doesn't really say Caesar will be a problem. Caesar is a problem. He says, I think 4 or 5 times in that speech, he might be, he may be, he might be, which is, I think, it's interesting. That kind of possibility is an interesting thing for an actor to play, but it's also a smart way for a writer to get past censors and to have his cake and eat it too politically.
Yeah. And that, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say a word that Brutus uses in his speech pretty frequently, and I think in order for this play to work, for at least in Shakespeare's mind, we have to have ambition, has to be sort of in the forefront. I mean, and that's the reason why Brutus claims he kills Caesar, is because of his ambition. A question I would have for John and Jim, since you direct this so frequently, is based on this loose skeleton, how much do you think there's narcissism in the Caesar's character, or do you think he's just, I mean, you point out that he does sort of listen to his wife. I don't necessarily think a narcissist would, sorry, I'm backstage at the theater. I don't necessarily think a narcissist would listen to what his wife has to say, but ambition and narcissism.
Well,
he's deaf
John,
in one
go
ear,
ahead.
right? So maybe he's just listening to people with the side that's deaf.
Right. Well, he definitely
come again.
He definitely allows Decius Brutus to play to his vanity. I don't know if that's narcissism, but it's definitely vanity that he's, this big man who shouldn't be afraid of anything. And then he sort of is embarrassed, I think, that he listened to Calpurnia. Yeah, I don't know if that's narcissism. I mean, honestly, who could be that kind of person and not be a total narcissist? I don't know, at least have a pretty high opinion of themselves,
I mean, again, I don't think this about Brutus, but you could make the case that Brutus also could be a snake in the shell. He might be, as you said earlier, Sarah, he could become a king or a tyrant just as much as anybody else. And I agree with you, John. Nobody gets into those positions without a considerable amount of ambition, and whether you call that narcissism or not, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if at least from the inside of a production, whether or not the label is helpful. That if you're playing the part or if you're directing the part, I think you try to stay away from the label and let if somebody in the audience wants to use that label, then you let them. But I liked what John said about walking into the room. He had the power, and what seems to be clear is Pompey had the power. Pompey's dead. Julius killed Pompey, had Pompey killed. So Julius has the power and walks into the start of this story with more power than anyone else. And whether or not that is power that has already been shown to be used badly or not, I think that's the given. He's got more power than everyone else. And that makes Cassius and others worried about what he might become. Shakespeare, and part of the reason I bring up when he wrote it and on top of his game, Shakespeare could have written Caesar to be more of a dick. He could have written him to be deserving of that knife more than those knives, more than he does. And certainly his biggest dick moment is right before he gets stabbed. All of that stuff there. I mean, that's where I think we see the most potentially tyrannical, abusive power kind of stuff. But the writing's already been written. You know, the writing's already on the wall. He's going down no matter what he does in that moment.
I've got a. Sorry, Jim. I've got just going back to the original question. Why did he write it? I've no idea. I don't actually know when he wrote it, and I'm not a good enough student of English history because, funnily enough, not every Englishman is a walking encyclopedia of everything that's ever happened. But depending on when he wrote it, this is just a personal opinion. I don't know anybody else who backs this up, but it might be Mary, Queen of Scots, because Elizabeth, if he wrote it during the Elizabethan period, Mary, Queen of Scots was a rising power against Catholicism, towards Catholicism, to bring Catholicism back into Britain. The Scottish were backing her, hence Mary, Queen of Scots. The French were backing her. She was a real power play against Elizabeth. And if she got into power, she would hand power back to the Pope, who could have been, so the Pope could have been considered Caesar, right? And so Elizabeth had her put to death. And Elizabeth could be seen as either the Antony or the Brutus sort of character in that, both sympathetic in both ways as to why you need to kill such a threat to burgeoning Protestant power.
I think that's a great thought, and I think that whether that was on the forefront of the writer's mind or somewhere on a back burner, it was certainly a truism. That piece, that flavor of history was going on, and how much he meant it to parallel that, or accidentally it paralleled that, who knows? But I think that's a great point. I'm looking at the time, and I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about our project in Connecticut to make sure folks are aware of what we're doing there. And I've got the old school term that, gosh, I think everybody here is probably old enough to get, is that I've got a human jukebox here. I could say a human playlist. Jason Young and Sarah Young and I created a show called Shakespeare's Villains and Clowns at the Globe, where we put together a bunch of scenes and script and songs and improv to tell the story of what we're trying to do in Connecticut and demonstrate Shakespeare staging conditions that everybody on this call has heard ad nauseum in different ways and experienced ad nauseum. But Sarah and Jason, I'm interested in pressing play at the beginning of our show. Hi, my name is Sarah. My name is Jason. So that you can give them the nutshell version of what we're doing in Connecticut as a beginning point.
First of all, this show that Jim's talking about, Shakespeare's Villains and Clowns at the Globe, it is a show and a commercial in a way that I think only Jim Warren could have ever created. Like it's a wild ass like 45 minutes of Shakespeare and improv and music. And Benjamin's seen it, Vanessa's seen it, some other people on this call have seen it. So the stuff that we try to highlight at the beginning of the show, you can be my editor here as I try to remember it all. We talk.
Doesn't she say more than you?
Yeah, we talk about. I talk about the financial impact that it's going to make on
in the beginning. What after you say hi and you say what?
He wants us to do the opening.
I want you to do the lines.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
You just finished singing.
Yeah. Oh, I say hi. I'm Jason.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are so glad to be with you here tonight. Welcome to Shakespeare's Villains and Clowns at the Globe.
Wait, what?
Welcome to Shakespeare's Villains and Clowns at the Globe.
Okay, but we're not at the Globe, are we? We are on the playgrounds here, right?
Yeah, yes, we are. But I mean, metaphorically, isn't all Shakespeare sort of at the Globe? Regardless of our literal, physical, or virtual cockpit.
No, and please don't say cockpit.
Okay, but we are from the American Shakespeare Center, and therefore
No,
we're from the American Globe Center, son of a bitch. And therefore everything we do is at the Globe.
No, everything we do is from the Globe, not at the Globe.
That is semantics.
No, that's English. So, for example, all of these people in our little boxes, they are not at the Globe. They are where they are in their little boxes.
This is going to be longer than Jim wanted it to be.
Yeah. So fast forward, when we first talk about the American.
Yeah, so we're excited to tell you about the American Globe Center project, where we're going to turn Connecticut into Shakespeare Central. The plan in Connecticut is we are going to build a theater campus, and that theater campus is going to have at its anchor in the middle as the centerpiece is the world's only timber frame recreation of William Shakespeare's 1614 Globe Theater. But it's also going to have a modern, state-of-the-art performing arts playhouse that's going to have 2 performance spaces under one roof. And it's also going to have rehearsal space and workshop space and education space. And there's going to be gallery space for the visual arts. It's still up in the air whether or not we're going to have an amphitheater or not connected to our campus. But in addition to creating Shakespeare plays on the Globe stage and also inside of the Performing Arts Center, we're going to be doing Shakespeare adjacent plays. We're going to be doing other classical plays. We're going to be doing Broadway musicals. We're going to be doing new works. We're going to be doing improv, though I haven't totally convinced Jim of that yet. There's going to be dance concerts. There's going to be the symphony and the youth ballet and all of those things. And there's going to be park space. The campus design has green space built into the design, so that the community and the visitors, when they come to the American Globe Center, will have a chance to enjoy the park space as well as the 2 performance spaces.
Sarah Young, what do you say about Stratford being our inspiration?
So in 1599, Shakespeare and his company built the Globe. It burns down in 1613. But out of those ashes, within a year, a second Globe was built. In Stratford, Connecticut, the American Shakespeare Festival Theater opened, but then 1955, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And in 2019, that building burned down.
You see the connection here?
So just like Shakespeare did out of his ashes, we are inspired by those ashes of the American Shakespeare Festival Theater to build a Globe in Connecticut.
So we thought we were going to build this in Stratford, Connecticut, that where that theater burned down, Tom Evans, who was an SSE actor, lived, his house was in walking distance. He watched that theater burn, and he called me while I was in West Virginia directing the Youngs, and said, "Hey, we got this great opportunity. We got this beautiful piece of land. There was a Shakespeare festival that was here. It was a singular building, and it wasn't a thrust, and it looked nothing like the Globe. Regardless of what you hear people say, it was just a pretty proscenium theater on this gorgeous piece of property on the river. And lots of folks had tried to redo that theater, came up with plans to redo it, and nobody succeeded. And then arsonists went in there and burned it down. So blank slate. Jim, I think that the people here want something. He organized a festival where he got all kinds of different groups to come and perform on the grounds of that place. And so he said, what can we dream up? And Tom was a part of the SSE as we were moving to Stanton. So the idea of us having the American Shakespeare Center, I'm now saying that name correctly at the right time, the American, well, actually, we were still Shenandoah Shakespeare at the time. We had been we gladly talked into being the anchor company of a globe that was going to be built overlooking the James River in Richmond. And then Stanton came to us and said, we want you to move your base of operations here. And so we started thinking about Stanton as a possible home. We still wanted to tour. But because of that Globe project, we thought, let's not just build a black box in Stanton. If we're going to be the anchor company of a Globe in Richmond, let's build Shakespeare's indoor theater in Stanton. And then between the two of them and our tour, we'll be able to do all of this cool stuff. And when I tell that story, I usually say, thank God for unanswered prayers. The Richmond project fell through, and we got that architect on board with us, Tom McLaughlin. He became our architect for the Blackfriars Playhouse. And then we had the idea that we're going to start with the Blackfriars and keep touring, and eventually we would build the 1614 Globe. So the idea of building the second Globe was part of that vision for Stanton. And during my time there, we never completely gave up on that, but we knew we weren't ready for that. And I left, and then a couple of years later, COVID arrived everywhere, and everything started to morph and change. So I brought Tom the idea that we were working on in Stanton, but with twists. So let's build the 1614 Globe, but let's not try to recreate another Blackfriars. Let's build a modern indoor playhouse so that, that can be year round and not open to the elements. And though it's going to be a thrust stage, it'll also have all of the bells and whistles, all the technology for us to do anything under the sun in there while we do Shakespeare staging conditions at the Globe. And so part of what we had talked about in Stanton was, in addition to us having the Blackfriars and building a Globe, we wanted somebody else to take over that theater downtown and retrofit that old theater so that there was new plays, modern plays, musicals, other things going on to create a theater campus that is like all of the other big North American Shakespeare festivals. So what we are now, so we thought that was going to happen in Stratford. That piece of property in Stratford was owned by the city. And so we set out trying to get a grassroots movement going. We tried to get the city council on board and the mayor on board. And the city council eventually said, we are going to abdicate to the mayor, and the mayor is going to make this decision. And when we finally had a conversation with the mayor, she said, your project is too big. We don't want that kind of tourism in our town. We don't want that kind of economic development. We don't want that boon to education. It's too big. We're going to build a food truck court instead. And now, as I tell that story,
and a white box theater, which I'm still trying to figure out what that is.
She said black box theater, and then the people that drew up drawings drew a big black box that was ugly, and so they had it redone. And she doesn't really know what a black box is, so she had another drawing done with it being not black but white, and called it a white box. So you can hear what we're dealing with. And now when I tell that part of the story, I say thank God for unanswered prayers, because Stratford was not a great location for us. Stratford doesn't have a downtown. Stratford doesn't have any of the things that make, I think, those other North American Shakespeare festivals destination theaters. You go to those places and there is a small town that is interesting there, and there's other stuff to do around it. John Harrell has worked at Utah, which I think actually has the least pretty smallish downtown, but it's far prettier than Stratford, Connecticut is. So not doing it in Stratford opened us up to looking around Connecticut. And we had so many great Zoom calls with different Connecticut officials, and they all kept pointing us to Norwich, Connecticut. And Norwich, Connecticut is, if you go up the coast from Stratford, you will hit a river. There's a town there called New London. Guess what they called the river there? Anybody?
David, you said it. You're just on mute.
The Mississippi?
They call
it the Thames, right, Jim?
Thames.
They
Yeah,
call it
They call it the
It's the Thames.
Thames. Yes,
Yeah.
you go up that river, and where it hits land, and there are two other rivers that come into it. It creates this triangle shape. That's the town of Norwich. And 5 miles one way is the Mohegan Sun Casino. 8 miles the other way is Foxwoods Casino. Mystic and New London, there at the mouth of the river, are 20 minutes away, and those are huge tourist destinations. So Norwich has taken the lead in wooing us to come to their location. And frankly, as soon as I got to Norwich and saw it, it looks exactly like it reminded me so much of Stanton 30 years ago, except it's on the water. The downtown is on the water. Jason, can you show us drawings that show us that location and some renderings of what the two buildings might look like?
It could definitely, if it's the old Norwich I'm familiar with, it could definitely use a boost in tourism for sure. 100%.
Part of what reminded me of Stanton is that when we got to Stanton, they had begun some economic redevelopment. There had been the beginnings of a renaissance. And the way that I tell that story is there was a wave already happening there. And we came into Stanton and created a tsunami that then doubled the economic development of the town and doubled the tourism of the town within a decade and a half. And so Norwich has a lot of that same thing, where some things have already started to happen, but they need more things to happen, and we can help them. I'm seeing stuff on the side there, Jason. It was up and now it's not up.
Yeah, just give me a second. I don't know why I decided to not work on it.
I must say it worked in Stanton. I mean, I don't know if any. I mean, some of the people on this call come here frequently. This place is completely different from what it was like 20 years ago. Completely different.
And part of the way that I've been pitching this project up in Connecticut is using Stanton and the Blackfriars as a proof of concept. That's with 300 seats, we transformed that small town. The Globe, the 1614 Globe, is going to be smaller than the 1599 one that's in London. And any of y'all that are deep into that geekdom know that there are a lot of folks who think that the diameter of what was used in London was too big, that it should have been a little smaller. And so a lot of the thinking since 1996 is when I think it opened in London, has shifted a little bit. And we have the Holler drawing from not too long after Shakespeare died of the second Globe. So we've actually got more concrete, well, it's not concrete, is it? We've got more facts, we think, to base what this thing might look like. And so it's going to seat and stand 900, and it's a 90-foot diameter rather than the one in London that is 100-foot diameter. Our indoor big stage playhouse will be a thrust, and it'll be between 900 and 1,000 with really raked seats so that we are creating that proximity. That idea of being close to the action of the stage is going to be, we're going to take the performance style that we did in the Blackfriars, that y'all that are still working there are doing today. We're going to be taking that performance style and doing that in the Globe, but also doing a lot of that aesthetic inside the indoor playhouse as well. And if anybody has ever, let's see, for those folks, I wrote an article that got published in American Theater Magazine in October of 2020, I think it was. And it was about a vision for how theater can redefine itself post-pandemic and the revolution that we need in our theater industry. And part of that revolution, I think, is we've got to return theater back to some of those basic things that we do that we did and y'all still do in the Blackfriars every day. That idea of theater of the imagination, of not putting money into creating movies on stage. If we spend our money more intelligently, we can hire actors full time and pay them health insurance. We can have year-round employment rather than just gig workers. We can have 5-day, 40-hour work weeks for artists in addition to staff members. There's all kinds of things that we think we can do because of the volume of business we'll be able to do and keep prices low. That's the other thing that theater has gotten way out of whack with, is that you have to be a privileged son of a bitch to be able to afford a lot of theater tickets in a lot of locations. And theaters are struggling because they got to charge those ticket prices because of how expensive their productions are. And if they're trying to pay actors a full-time living wage, they're challenged because of the model that has been there for so long. When you get to create a Colossus from scratch, you can create a business plan that does it all differently in a way that I think is more equitable and more fair and more sustainable from a business perspective. So Norwich is in the lead, and downtown Norwich is in the lead. And from that overhead shot, you can see where is that overhead shot in this group of three? No, I didn't include that one. You can kind of see it here. If you look at the left and the right, those are two smaller rivers that feed into the Thames Thames, that is the larger one in front. And so downtown is right at that triangle. And there's a park that you can't see that's on the other side between the water and where we are. There's more area for green space. And we need to be working with the city of Norwich to make that happen because they own a piece of that property and we've got to buy property from other folks. We have on the floor of the state legislature a $3 million bill to get us going. The Norwich state senator is also the head of the appropriations committee. And in one meeting, she was so sold on this, she said, how much do you need to get started? And we said, well, 2 to 3 million will help us buy the pieces of property that we need to buy. And she submitted this bill and so we've got a lot of momentum happening in Norwich, but we still haven't planted our flag to say it's absolutely happening there. We've had meetings with folks in Hartford that would create a completely different idea, completely different vibe to be on a larger piece of land in downtown Hartford that is a much bigger city. So rather than it being Stanton on the river, this is a bigger city with a lot of other stuff going on. Our campus would be in walking distance of that downtown and Trinity College that is right there. There's a lot of upsides in a completely different way in Hartford. So we don't know exactly yet where we're going to build this sucker. Hopefully within the next few months, we will be able to get a commitment enough from one of the cities and from money getters to help us plant our flag in the ground and say it's absolutely going to happen in this location. So I just threw a lot of stuff at you. Does that bring up any immediate questions for anybody?
It seems to me, I'm sorry if I stepped on anybody. It seems to me that as enticing as the Hartford is, you're dealing with a lot of competition of existing organizations. Granted, they're not doing Shakespeare, but they are all vying for the same dollar. I love the Norwich idea. It gravitates to me. It also plays to your already existing resume, as you were, of coming in and taking a city that needs and wants to see some progress within their community, puts them on the map. And as you pointed out, you're actually not far from the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, so you might even be able to persuade them to help roll some of their current product, for lack of a better word, current product your way as, a springboard into more of a mainstream view of Connecticut area. So.
Absolutely. And Dave, it's a completely different list of pros and cons when we look at those two cities. And part of what we're trying to leave our brains open to is who steps forward the farthest first. And it appears that Norwich might be the place that does that, but it might not be. It might be that the heels keep dragging there, and Hartford comes from behind to take the lead to get us that property, that commitment, and those issues. We feel pretty confident that putting a 1614 Globe recreation that Peter McCurdy is working on, and we've already had lots of conversations with him. We're hoping to get him over here in June to do some talks about recreations. Peter McCurdy is the architect who took over to help build that 1599 Globe in London, and he was a main contributor to the indoor playhouse there, the Sam Wanamaker Playhouse in London as well. So we feel confident that if we put that sucker anywhere, it's going to draw people. That it's not going to be, if Hartford gets into the lead, we're looking at a larger local audience who might be able to come to the show and not worried about all the other cool things to do in Hartford, because we still will see this as a tourism flex. You know, that wherever we put this, it's going to be about tourism as much as it is about also giving local folks something that they get to call their own.
Jim, Camille has raised their hand for the question.
Thank you for seeing that.
Hey there. I was wondering if you're anticipating a college or university partnership at either one of these locations.
Yes, and part of we use this word a lot during my time at the ASC, and Vanessa can speak to whether or not it's an ongoing thing or not. But the idea of a consortium of schools that are connected to what we're doing and how we're doing it, that can also grow into partnerships where like Mary Baldwin has with the American Shakespeare Center, where there are degree opportunities that we are involved in partnership with those colleges and universities. But we expect that there are a bunch of local, locals are the wrong word. There are a lot of universities within a couple of hours of Norwich, and certainly across Connecticut, that we want to be open to partnering with. And so the answer is yes. And hopefully the more the merrier, that it's not just a single thing. And let's not forget that Yale School of Drama, the Geffen School of Drama now, because of his huge donation to redo that part of the Yale campus, that is also in this state. So partnership with them, we're hoping, is also going to be in the works. Part of what we're doing, I mean, this thing that we just did is something that members of stageable.com get for free, and only costs everyone who's not a member of stageable.com $1. So it's our partnership with stageable.com that has created these forums. That this one is now the second one that we've done. Benjamin Reed, would you tell us a little bit about stageable.com?
And we thank you for your dollars.
Absolutely.
Hey, so yeah, I'll try to be really quick here. Stageable.com is basically a platform with a purpose. And that purpose is to see the preservation of the thing that I think a lot of us love, which is a live entertainment experience that transcends time and space, and makes magic, right? We've all been there, either on the stage or as an audience member, and we look back fondly on the experience we had. And I look around and I see a lot of theaters and actors and musicians struggling to do their thing, and on the outside I'm going, man, can there be a better way? What can we do? And so I make no claim as to knowing exactly what that better way is, but Stageable is going to keep trying stuff until we find it. And then as an entrepreneur, I noticed a problem that I wanted to try and solve, which actually Josh Innerst being on here is perfect because I use a story. You were playing Petruchio at Cleveland Playhouse, is that right? You can just nod.
No,
Is
it's
that right?
at Cincy Shakes.
At Cincy Shakes, thanks. Yeah, and here I am stuck in Virginia and was not able to travel to Cincy and see Josh play Petruchio, which I would have loved to have seen because Josh is a brilliant actor, as many of you know. And I was like, man, I think we have an issue connecting audiences and stages. I think the problem is that the only value offering we have is that, come to where I am to see this thing. So anyway, Stageable is trying to bridge that gap and say, just because you're not, in this vicinity all year round, maybe we can bring value into your life. And so I think that this meeting is one of the ways that we're doing so. We're still experimenting and learning. At my wine bar, we've been doing live streams of live concerts, so you can actually tune in and watch it at the same time as the in-person audience. And I'm continuing to experiment with that. And then what we've created with the American Globe Center is a membership model that while there is, the barbell side of the $3 million bill on the floor, I believe there's another side, which is the grassroots everyday people who can put their dollars behind a project that they believe in, and through the power of numbers and just sheer volume of we're all going to get behind this thing and send a little bit of money every month to make sure it happens. I think that that's going to create a lot of momentum for the American Globe Center. Not to mention, just if you want to see something happen, the fuel to the fire is capital. In order for the American Globe Center to continue doing the work that they're doing, they need funding. And so as an entrepreneur, I want to figure out ways to bring value into people's lives. So if you sign up as a subscriber, we have a list of benefits that that you get for your membership. And maybe it's not you, maybe it's someone who would love to be a part of this conversation or love to tune in. Maybe they have mobility issues, but or maybe they live in a different place or whatnot. But we'll be doing different events like this, virtual meetups. There's access to the artistic director. We're going to backlog content onto the American Globe Center's page so that members can go and access that content whenever it's convenient to them. And hopefully that just grows and grows as the platform does. And so apologies for being long-winded. Jim, please.
No, thank you, Benjamin. Let me just go longer term and shorter term. Longer term is both Benjamin and us at the AGC believe that there is something worth tapping into digitally that we let go of as soon as we, the industry, the theater industry, and I'm not going to say we, I'm going to say they, the theater industry did all that stuff during lockdown of trying to survive and trying to shift to online stuff. And as soon as theaters opened again, some theaters kept doing digital things, but most of them have let them go. And part of what I think the future of theater is making the community not just local, and in our case with the American Globe Center, local, regional, national, international. We think that globe is going to draw people internationally as in addition to the locals. But one of the things that I think we learned from the horrors of lockdown is that if we can use digital media to create a bigger community, people that can't travel or can travel 1 year, can't travel the next year, might be able to travel the next year. How do we make them feel a part of what we're doing without becoming filmed shows for the sake of filming shows? The idea of live theater, I think we all agree, live theater, you should be there. It's about being there live. what about the people that can't be there live? Isn't there something that we can do to have them feel part of the family, have them feel connected, and entice them to want to make that journey whenever they can? It's a similar thing for those of you that are familiar with the old ASC. The touring troupe served as a commercial. It was a traveling commercial. And we're going to have a traveling component to the American Globe Center that actually that's part of our 3-year build up to opening the Globe. In year 2, we'll have a touring troupe. So we're going to create that commercial. But in addition to the live commercial, there is things like this, other digital content, stuff that's not just live streaming a show, that can make people feel like they're a part of it, that is cheap, that is affordable. $25 gets you access to a lot of stuff. And we're hoping that that builds our community bigger than just the geographic community that we're also going to build. So part of what I'm interested in Benjamin doing, if he can, is throw up the list of things that folks get for their $25 membership to Stageable. And I just want to put it through your eyes to see if your brains come into places of, oh, you know what's not on that list that would be so cool for you to offer, blah, blah. Because we tried to think of things that we can do now before we have a theater that will help us pay the bills of the website and the domain names, the small things of making copies, that again, we're not selling a product yet. So this is a way to have small income that's affordable. Wow, I cannot read that, but is that just because I'm old?
I can't read it either, but I might be old too.
Well, you're
Here, I
less
can
old than
read
I
it.
am, but
I can read it. So the list of membership benefits is that you become an AGC Globe Trotter. So that's the nickname for the community members. You get general admission to all special events, exclusive live streaming events, virtual meetups with the artistic director and the AGC team, access to the message board that they're going to be building. Bonus content exclusive to the Globetrotters is early access to content, podcasts, newsletters, periodic texts of the what's happening in the life of AGC, sneak peeks, bloopers, influence on podcast content, and more goodies that we're still cooking up. And then, of course, as always, gratitude and appreciation for your support of this dream. And then the last thing here that you really can't see is free backstage access site-wide. So when you support the Globe, you'll get access to everything that's happening on stageable.com.
So is there anything that y'all can think of? Hey, I'm a theater geek. I'm a Shakespeare geek. I like this idea. You know what would be cool if you offered blah, blah?
Jim.
Sir.
You may not know this. I'm an enterprise architect. I build solutions like this. If you want to have an offline conversation, I'm happy to start thinking about this sort of stuff with you.
Love to. Love to. Love to. Yes, sir.
Can I just say that the thing that resonates to me as an educator on what you have said is that I'm all for trying to eliminate the stigma of cultural elitism, which is what a lot of what you refer to when you're talking about ticket prices, target audiences, because of those ticket prices, bad press that the theater gets just in general. I'm all for going with a word that Benjamin used, which is grassroots, getting people who might not otherwise go to theater because they've been persuaded that theater is a cultural elitist act, to actually come out and say, oh, wow, I can connect to this. So anything that you can put into your wording and the things that you offer that sort of helps to fight that stigma, that label that people often get trapped in from conversations that happen regarding theater would be great.
Yeah, I hear you, Dave. Thank you. Anything else on anybody's mind that you can think of? you want
I'll
to
say
spit out there?
something. I'll say something. I thought when I was signing up for this that there would be hundreds, because I thought it was, yeah, and this is sort of my segue into the idea, if it's available. I thought, oh, I I went to shareable.com and I was like, okay, wow, this started in just 2025. We're on the ground floor. I hope they have the bandwidth for every nerd like me who's going to want to talk to my old friends. I was excited to see everybody that I saw on the docket, and I thought there'd be hundreds. I don't know. I think all of you who are theater makers, the ASCs, the other people. I mean, I'll of course reach out to my colleagues at Cincinnati Shakes, and some of you on here have a connection with that. I think anytime because especially at the ASC, you know how big those nerds are, and we love them for it. Anytime you sell a ticket, have an opportunity to get in on the ground floor, put it in the program. Say, hey, would you like to watch us rehearse? They do. They want to watch us rehearse. They want to watch us do anything, like get 10 guys and girls around reading plays. The fans will, and that's why I love this. I won't take too much longer, but because I was able to watch my friend Giles play Hamlet in a Tampa, Florida online job site theater production of Hamlet, I said, I got to get down to Tampa. I got to see what they're doing down there. I went down 3 weeks ago, saw their production of Macbeth, had a great time, loved the whole arts community down there on the water, posted about that, then found out that my old company was doing a production here at the Folger Shakespeare, connected that way. I do believe that this virtual connection is a way to augment, supplement, fructify the live in-person connection too. And you absolutely should never be shy about everything that we put on live. We also can try and stream it, and if you can get people involved, then maybe you can scale back the monetary involvement. Like, of course, I was going to do this today, even if I had 9 things to do. I'd do it in my car, like Jessica was doing it, because it was $1. I'll give $1 to anything, and so will all of our fans. They'll even give 5 and 10. So if you can make it so that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can get in and watch you, Jim, build things, the players play, they'll do it, and connect all of the theaters that we know, and say, let's stream all the time whenever we can. I mean, it doesn't have to be high gloss. They'll watch a cam in the corner of the room and love doing it.
I'm delighted to hear that theater in Florida was streaming in 2025, because you don't hear about it very much anymore. So that's incredible, and love the idea. That's part of what's on our future list of things to do is to do a rehearsal as part of one of these offerings. Absolutely.
I also like the idea of one of the ways that this can connect you or connect people, because having spent most of my life working in theater companies that are often in places like Cedar City or Stanton that are kind of out of the way, it's easy in the regional scene, especially in classical theater, to kind of feel like when I go under contract, I disappear from my industry in many ways, shape, and form. And this, I think there's interesting potential in here to stay in contact with industry peers, even though I'm out in the middle of nowhere for an extended or even a short period of time, just to share that work and let that work be seen and connected around the country and globe. I think there's interesting potential there.
Yeah, and that brings up a really interesting specific too, Josh, that y'all at Utah did. They did it in Oregon. barely toyed around with it when I was at the ASC, and I know that it happened at least once after I left. But that idea of inviting casting people and artistic directors to the theater to be able to audition folks is a great tool that we need to be doing more. And on top of that, there is a virtual element that can also help connect folks in the industry for the next gig for people. As much as part of the revolution, I think our industry needs is allowing for the possibility of full-time year-round employment year after year after year. That is something that is not the norm, happens in a few places, but to be able to have any troupe of actors be filled with full-timers plus some folks who have gone away and come back, plus some new folks, some who are working year-round full-time contracts, but also leaving some slots open for people who want to be gig workers, who want to come in and work here for a while, but then go and do other things. Trying to do all of that and figure out how the virtual stuff might connect us to other theater professionals, I think is a really interesting idea that we need to explore.
I have a stageable question for Benjamin, which I certainly could take offline at some point, but as we're all gathered here, and to quote my favorite reprobate Shakespearean knight, I am old. I am old. So I may just not understand what's happening. I went on to Shareable and I subscribed for the American Globe Center through it, and I don't understand what happened after that. So maybe you and I could talk at some point, because I don't seem to have a password to access things, and I wasn't asked to create them, so I don't know what I did.
Yeah, no, you didn't do anything wrong. So this is a prototype website.
Okay.
I am not a web designer. I am doing this through the only means I know how, and I am, Stageable also has no money, and so I am the only unpaid employee. But what will happen, and I need to figure out how to manage it better. But what will happen is that you will get a welcome email from the American Globe Center welcoming you as a member. You'll get the password, and then at the top of next month, you will get an email with the next month's password. So it's going to change every single month. And then and that will give you access to all that AGC is doing on Stageable. It's also going to give you access to anything that we do from the green room. So there will be concerts and other live streaming events as well.
Cool. All right. I wanted to make sure I thought it might be a good time to ask it. I just didn't know where things stood, or if I was the one making the mistake. So
that's a great question.
This is in the spirit of, if you try to make something perfect, you'll never make anything at all.
True enough. I will see you next weekend in Stanton.
Yes, sir.
Well, we are way past the time that I thought we would go. Thank you for being here for this long, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out and having a great discussion about a play that I wish was done great more often, because I think it's a great play, and I think that it's tricky, but when it's done well, it's freaking awesome. And I've been around a bunch of awesome productions because of you folks. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all of the non-actors who were here, all of the questions, all of the contributions. This has been wonderful. So thank you. We're looking at next month's On the Playground not being a specific play, but in honor of Shakespeare's birthday. I'm going to get some scholar types in here and talk about Shakespeare from a different point of view. And we will send out information that will let you know who we're going to get. But look for us again the Sunday right before his birthday on the 23rd is Easter. So we will probably be looking at April 27th as our next one of these things. But we'll be in touch with you about that. And I'll probably also be in touch with you about feedback. Love to hear stuff that you liked about today, stuff that you'd like to hear differently, that you'd like us to do differently in the future. But y'all are an awesome group of people. So thank you for spending 2 hours with us.
And I'm going to make a weird request. Sorry, Jim, to steal your goodbye thunder. We would obviously love for you to join stageable.com at $25 a month and support what we're trying to do. You know, that type of support is like paying for our internet, you know, that type of stuff. But if you're not interested, I'd also love to know why as well. Like, I would love for you to send like, you could respond to the email that I sent you and said, hey, whatever, I'm not going to join Stageable, and I think it's because it's just this reason. Because that type of feedback helps us go, oh, well, we can alter it and change this and add that. And, like Benjamin said, it's a beta test. And so having sort of a feedback from people who seem to know and love Jim and care about the project is super helpful. So we'd love to have you join Stageable and support us. And if you're not interested, I'd love to know why. So I appreciate that opportunity. Cool. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you all very much.
Great to see everybody.
Have a good rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.